Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Burke. I'm the Executive Director of Western Liberty Network, and this is another one of WLN's Saturday Zoom sessions where we have typically prominent speakers, expert in their various fields, and the ability for folks to log on and interact. First of all, I have to point out that as a 501c3 organization, Western Liberty Network does not endorse or oppose any political party, candidate, ballot measure, or legislation. What we do is support limited government principles and train limited government grassroots activists how to do politics successfully wherever they are. If you would like to learn more, I'm going to share the screen here. This is the westernlibertynetwork.org website. This is the home page, and here you see our guest. This is advertising his session, and the red button you can always use to sign on to our Saturday sessions. If you scroll down, you can see what we have been doing. 418 of our trainees got elected at Oregon's May 18th local elections. This tells you a little bit about that. And if you scroll down, you'll see more information about what WLN does. Here, you can see today's guest, Andrei Illarionov. You can click on that and hear his presentation to our 2020 annual conference. If you would like to learn more, you can go to our training page. Here you can download a variety of PDF files. These are designed to be provided with live training, but stand alone. And you can pick the topic that interests you and download the PDF. If you would like to see our training sessions, all of these Saturday training sessions are recorded and posted here. So if you continue to scroll down the training page, you will see the various training sessions that are there, and you can simply click on the one that interests you and you'll be able to view it. Today's training session will be posted by the end of the day today, so you'll be able to send links to your friends or anyone else that you think will benefit. Typically, these get more views after they're recorded than they do live. And so we also make it clear that people are free to send around the links. None of this is copyrighted. We're interested in information getting out. If you find that you support what Western Liberty Network does, you can make a tax-deductible donation by going to our support tab and make a one-time contribution or a monthly contribution. And this helps Western Liberty Network do its various work. Again, the website is www.westernlibertynetwork.org. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and I will go to speaker view and turn the floor over to our guest, Andrei Illarionov. Andrei Illarionov is an intellectual. He's very bright. He's worked for the Cato Institute, a variety of other institutes, and he was also famously President Putin's senior economic advisor until he came to the United States. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to Andrei. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Richard, for inviting me. Thank you, everybody, for coming to this session and for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts concerning the state of the United States, of state of the mind in the United States. I do see it as absolutely unique, unexpected unfolding in the United States, especially in some other countries as well, but first of all in the United States over the last at least couple of years. But certainly these events did start not last year and not even year before, but last year and this year it became so obvious that all these events taken together, from my point of view, should be considered as the major threat, not only to freedom in the United States, but to freedom in the whole world, and threats to the basic liberties and rights of American people, as well as free people, free-minded people around the world. Certainly, Many of those events are very well known to those who are participating in these sessions. But I would mention probably two main challenges that we are facing right now. The first one is the current American administration with the current president, which I think it would be proper to say that United States never had such a president and never had such a administration that would pursue such a policy that is aimed on destruction of basic rights and liberties of American people. And second, and probably even more dangerous, this is a very substantial intellectual wave that is supporting such a policy. Let me first of all to talk a little bit about the current administration. Already a lot has been said about the current administration, about current president, and a lot will be said in future about that. But let me mention some most obvious actions in policies that have been implemented over the last even less than 9 months of the current administration in the White House. It is interesting to put those actions in comparison. For example, as we know, President Biden decided to stop construction of oil pipeline Keystone going from Canada to the United States, which the decision made energy less available for United States customers and produced substantial problems for Canadian friends of the United States and for Canadian economy. At the same time, President Biden removed all sanctions from construction of gas pipeline Nord Stream 2 that Mr. Putin was building and is going to finish this construction very soon from Russia to Germany to Europe. So it is remarkable that at the same time, President Biden is making decision to make United States more vulnerable to energy issues, energy shipments, and providing an opportunity for Mr. Putin to earn billions of dollars in European market. President Biden, as we know, decided to stop construction of the wall on the border with Mexico, which created the deepest and largest and longest migrant crisis on the southern border, with estimates up to 2 million people, illegal immigrants, are coming to the United States just this year. I'm not going to in details because everybody knows what's going on over there. At the same time, and actually those people who are coming to the United States are coming with only one purpose, to settle down in the United States, not demonstrating any particular loyalty to the United States, to rules of the United States, to institutions of the United States, to rights and liberties. People are coming to just earn money. At the same time, those people who did work with the United States in Afghanistan for a period of about 20 years, who were very loyal colleagues and partners of the United States and other Western countries, have been left behind in Afghanistan to Taliban with a very high probability to be captured and tortured and even killed. It is remarkable to know that the decision to stop the program of bringing those people who did work with the US administration has been taken by President Biden not in August, year 2021, when Kabul fell, not even in July 2021, when the decision has been taken to withdraw US troops from Afghanistan, but 3 months before. So that is why it is remarkable to note that in expectation that there might be wave of migration of those people who did work with United States, and this program that was designed to help those people who might come to the United States has been abruptly closed 3 months before this decision has been taken. So it cannot be called that it was just due mistake or due to some kind of a decision. It was a deliberate decision not to allow those people to come to the United States or to allies of the United States. We know that this decision has been reconsidered, and after that there was a particular special operation undertaken by US troops, and not only by US troops, but allies of the United States in Afghanistan, and some of those people have been taken out of Afghanistan, but unfortunately it has been done in such ways that we still don't know everybody who came out of Afghanistan and what are their credentials. But this is remarkable to put this in comparison. Mr. Biden in June went to Europe and participated in G7 meeting, in NATO meeting, in European Union, a heads of state meeting, claiming that he now brings NATO together, unlike his predecessor. At least Mr. Biden claimed so. But in reality, as we have seen, exactly in the same June and later on, Biden did not consult with NATO allies concerning the decision of withdrawal US troops from Afghanistan. And troops and many civilian personnel of US allies have been left in Afghanistan. They have not known the decision of the American president. And as we know, Prime Minister of United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, tried to communicate, tried to call Mr. Biden, and for 36 hours he was not able to get to Biden to find out what kind of decision has been taken. So on one hand, it has been proclaimed that, okay, this is a new leader of NATO who could unite all NATO allies, but in reality, it was a very serious blow to the NATO unity. Just a few days ago, we have learned about the formation of new military alliance, or some kind of security alliance between the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia. It might be a reasonable way to have another security alliance, but as a result of how this alliance has been created, we had a problem with France. And we can just once again just look back into the 4 years of the predecessor to Mr. Biden, to Mr. Trump, whom many people try to blame for some activities against NATO, but we never had such a crisis with the NATO ranks during Trump presidency. But in this presidency, only 8 months in this presidency, and we have number of crises that really shattered the unity of NATO allies. We've seen that this administration is undertaking steps that are not supporting Ukraine that became victim of Mr. Putin's aggression against Ukraine. Mr. Biden refused to communicate initially with the Ukrainian president, refused to provide necessary military equipment for defense of Ukraine from aggression. And what's still important, it is end of September of year 2021, and United States still does not have US ambassador in Kyiv, in Ukrainian capital. And US still does not have a special envoy, a representative of the US president in Ukraine, unlike the special envoy that Mr. Trump has sent to Kyiv. It is remarkable that probably the most important country right now in Europe that under aggression from Kremlin, it still does not have US representative, neither ambassador nor special envoy. I could continue these examples, and you know many of them in many other areas. And we need to ask, first of all, ourselves, each other, what does it mean? Why the current US president pursues this particular policy? Probably I would mention a couple of more examples. Mr. Biden is very eager to conclude a new agreement with Iran that would allow Iran to enrich uranium and to build nuclear devices, which was strongly opposed by the previous administration. Mr. Biden's administrations provided more than $200 million in April to Palestinian authorities that have been used immediately to provide financial assistance to terrorists and to their families. And that led to a new wave of terrorist attacks on Israel, with more than 4,000 missiles launched from Palestinian territories on Israeli cities and settlements. Never before during the Trump presidency we had seen anything like that. Also, due to very probably unconventional, but nevertheless reasonably successful diplomacy versus North Korea, North Korea stopped launching missiles and the program of missiles and the nuclear explosions on the North Korean territory. And now with Mr. Biden in the White House, North Korea resumed these exercises. So many actions we can see. I'm not even touching right now the domestic policy of the United States with economic package that is going to substantially destroy the American economy, which put many people out of job, and many people do not want to work with such economy that is flooded with fresh money. And we need really to think why Mr. Biden is pursuing such a policy, because there is no mistake, just all of these actions are aimed on destruction of the United States and the interests and the rights and liberties of American people and of allies of the United States. Let me say my personal view about that. Probably many of us did think about this a lot, and we have different views and different ideas and different hypotheses. My understanding is that Mr. Biden has a very particular world view, but some particular mindset, which I call is anti-Americanism. Mr. Biden is profoundly anti-American. If we do understand by American and by Americanism, the United States of America that we know for last 250 years, of 45 years to be precise. This is the country for which rights and liberties, division of power, freedom are very, very important elements. They are enshrined in the documents of American founding fathers. And it looks like that for Mr. Biden, all those values, all those principles, all those institutions are anathema. He is a really strong enemy to all those principles, values, institutions. And that is why he is doing everything possible to at least weaken or probably to destroy the United States that we know for last almost 2.5 years. Mr. Biden himself seems to me, he is not a particular fan of Palestinian terrorists, but he's using those terrorists as an instrument to weaken the United States. Probably Mr. Biden is not a particular fan of Mr. Putin, but he's using Mr. Putin as an instrument to weaken the United States. Mr. Biden personally himself is probably not a very, very big fan of Taliban, but he's using Taliban as an instrument against the United States. From this point of view, I would say that Mr. Biden looks like is an aggregator of anti-Americanism around the world. And certainly he is an aggregate of anti-Americanism within the United States. Whether Mr. Biden himself is the particular fan of BLM, I doubt it, but he's using BLM as an instrument against the United States. Whether he's a particular fan of radical socialism or communism in economic policies within the United States, I doubt it, but he's using this particular destructive economic policy against the United States. Whether he is a particular fan of critical race theory, I doubt it, but he's trying to use this critical race theory, and this is a so-called racial education that he's introducing or allowing to introduce in the US government institutions as an instrument to weaken the United States. So I would probably stop my initial remarks here by by expressing this hypothesis, this idea that for the first time in the American history, United States has a president in the White House who is internally deeply anti-American. And this is a huge problem for the United States, for US people, for United States people, and for the whole world, because it is going to lead to very serious problems and crisis and even catastrophe, not only in the United States, but in the whole world.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrei. Boy, that's a lot to chew on. It's good stuff. On my chat window here, I've been getting comments from lots of people, sort of amazed at how enlightening this all is. So if I understand correctly, Andrei, you are now willing to take any questions or comments that folks might have. If people have questions or comments, the group is small enough where I think folks can activate their own microphones, ask your question, and when you're finished speaking, go ahead and remute yourself so that we can preserve audio quality. I see Victoria has turned off her mute, so go ahead, Victoria.
Yes, thank you again, Andrei, for coming on and sharing your thoughts. It is very thought-provoking, and I do want to say also I listened to the talk that you gave at WLN's conference, and it was very inspiring how you stood up to Putin and the life philosophies that you share about always aiming high and never giving up. So thank you for that. I am curious to know, I know that you had expressed support about the insurrection of the Capitol, and I would like to know more about what led to that support, your thoughts around it in general.
Thank you, Victoria. If I understand correctly, your question, so it was about the my attitudes to what happened in Washington on January 6th.
Yes, please.
Right. The reason actually I did not support some particular events or some particular actions, but since I've been in Washington on that day, and I went to the streets and I saw those people, those several 100,000 people who were marching through Washington the whole day. And I went with them to Capitol. I did not go in to the building, but I was there. And I saw all these people. I listened to what they were saying. I did communicate with many of them. I heard these arguments between some of them. I saw BLM people who were trying to provoke those participants on aggressive actions, fortunately unsuccessfully. And in light of all this coverage that we have seen on many TV channels and in mass media, I felt myself necessary to share my views, my thoughts, my personal witnesses, what I've seen during that day. And I decided that it would be worse to just write immediately, just to become one of the thousand of witnesses of this event. And I wrote exactly what I've seen myself. I did not make any conclusions. I did not make any comments about what is behind that, who did what. I wrote exactly what I've seen myself. And as you know, I put this text in Russian language in my personal blog in Live Journal, and I published, and it is now probably the most read text in my Live Journal, with hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who watched, who read this text, and who copied and who just distributed everywhere. So in many, as you know, probably there was some repercussions for me, for myself, as a result of this text. And many people did ask me whether I have any some kind of sad feeling that I did it, and just whether what kind of my views on this text months after that, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months after that. And I, once again, looking at this text and check it against reality, against many new news, many new information that appeared since January 6th in investigations, in communications with memoir and comments of different people. And I don't see any wrong words. That's no misinformation. That's exactly what happened. And many other people actually did use much stronger words and much stronger comments about what happened on January 6th, and about the misinformation that has been spread around about this event from popular TV channels and from popular mass media, that actually is completely incorrect. There was no insurrection. There was no insurrection. I have not seen any insurrection. None of those people whom I've seen on the streets of Washington on January 6th did have intention of any insurrection. And all this video footage and photo footage and the information that we got seen then, I don't see any confirmation of this claim that there was any attempt of insurrection in Washington on January 6th.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay, I see that Larry Talbert's microphone is off. Did you have a question or a comment, Larry?
No, I don't. Is it
Okay.
off or on? Fine.
What's that?
I said I'm gaining from listening.
Okay, very good. Are there other questions from folks today? While people are formulating questions, I have one for Andrei. The people who are on these calls and the people who attended the conference you spoke at, they are grassroots activists. They want limited government. They're working in their communities and in their states. I'd like you to, if you can, sort of talk about what you think the role of such activists are in the preserving of our liberty and the advancement of our liberty, protecting it.
Right, the very first task, if you allow me to use this word, is to just that I did not think ever that would be such a task in the United States, within US society. I never thought that it would be a problem here, is just to provide information, objective information, correct information, not to allow to spread out misinformation or disinformation that became so popular and so widespread in the United States over the last maybe couple for me, for a person who came from Russia, from a country with very difficult history, especially concerning freedom of speech, freedom of information, freedom of expression. And I always did consider the United States as a bastion of freedom of speech. And I'm absolutely sure, based on my personal experience back in Russia, in the United States, and other countries, as well as from studying history, the freedom of speech is the basis, is the fundamental basis for all other freedoms. Without the freedom of speech, all other freedoms will be endangered. So that is why the attack on freedom of speech in the United States that we are witnessing right now is absolutely catastrophic. This is going to destroy the basic elements of American society and American way of life. So that is why the crucial element in the situation when the largest mass media with a wide coverage that are spreading disinformation, misinformation, manipulation, wrong information, and on purpose, they're hiding very important elements of information for general public. It is crucially important to spread information, to fight against this approach, to provide people, millions of people, with objective information that are in our disposal. And that we were doing towards Mr. Putin in Kremlin, in Russia, for last couple of decades, that he was spreading disinformation. To my great surprise and to my great sadness, we are forced right now to do a very similar job versus spreading misinformation from very important sources in the United States. And I think this is the most important business for grassroots organization, for individual people, for organization, just to keep flame of freedom of speech, of freedom of information in the United States and around the world.
Thank you very much, Andrei. I'm going to put us back on gallery view. Does anybody else have a question for Andrei? We've got one from Dimitri. Go ahead, Dimitri.
Thank you. And I do agree with you on the comments that you made regarding the January 6th. I had the pleasure of being there as well. And my experience and my observation was just like that as well. So thank you for that. My question is, organizations like the grassroots organizations like ours, Slavic Vote, and others, our main focus has been register people to vote and get them activated. Looking at everything that's going on right now, what would you say should be our primary focus? What should we be doing that could benefit, our community, the Slavic community, and I guess the American community? What should we be focusing right now?
All right, thank you, Dmitry. So just what I would repeat again, the number one task is just information, freedom of information, freedom of speech, freedom of free debates about different issues that are considered to be important for the US society and for the world as a whole. And second, especially for such organization like yours, that is trying to activate people in voting process. I think it is extremely important that as many people as possible could participate in election of year 2022, the first coming national election, and again in 2024. Now we can see that it is not a joke. This is a very serious issue, because this is a danger, this is a real threat to the country, to the society, to the institutions, and that has been a beacon of liberty in the world for 2.5 centuries. Last summer, in year 2020, when I was able to witness myself attacks of BLM bands on people on streets of Washington that were beating people, they were ransoming, where they just attacking small businesses, and not only small businesses, that were shuttering windows, that they were just really did what we know, unfortunately, based on the Russian historical experience, the term very well known, pogrom. They were doing pogroms in Washington, in many other cities around the United States. And this picture immediately brought to me comparison what the Red Guard did in Russia in 1917, and how those bands of Red Guard, after those pogroms, brought power of Bolsheviks and communists with the immeasurable atrocities to the Russian people. From the literature, we know that a very similar bands of stormtroopers went to the streets of Germany in 1930s, and they brought to power Nazi. And those Nazis created atrocities for hundreds of thousands Germans and Jews and Gypsies within Germany, and after that, millions and tens of millions of people in Europe. That's a very, very similar picture that what we have seen in some of 2020 on the streets of the American cities. This is an instrument of terror. How to terrorize people, just to give very particular forces of hatred to get to the power. And we should not be complacent, thinking that, okay, that happened that could happen in such countries like Russia. That could happen in such countries like Germany, but that could not happen in such Anglo-Saxon countries like the United States or Canada or United Kingdom. Unfortunately, history reminds us that stuff could happen everywhere if do not fight back. And the very important instrument to fight back, not to allow the forces of hatred, hatred against people to come to the power in the United States. So that is why it is so important to participate in election of 2022, 2024, and not to allow those forces to stay in power and to allow them to do what they or similar forces have done in Russia in 1917 or in Germany in 1933.
Thank you. If I can ask a second question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. One thing that I know that the Slavic community and other folks, when they think about running for office in the elections, they feel they often think that you have to be a businessman, you have to be a very smart person, kind of with a lot of connections. But with our experience, we kind of tell our community, if you are interested in running for office, you should run for office. Perhaps a smaller position somewhere in the lower, water boards or school board, things like that. What would you say to those folks who are maybe skeptical or still not sure if they can run for office? What would you say to those folks?
In Russian, we have such an expression. I'll try to translate into English, something like saving of those who are going to drown is a business of those who are going to be drowned. So it means that nobody can help us except of us. That's unfortunate reality. Sometimes some of us, some of your colleagues, or those people whom you do communicate can think, okay, so I have my own business, I have my own affairs, and I'm not going to participate in public affairs because it is too costly and not interesting and so on. Unfortunately, we know if we cannot defend ourselves, personally ourselves, our families, our friends, our colleagues in our society, there is no one who can do it.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Victoria.
Yeah. What I see in America today is there is a divide between the left and the right, as we all know. And one of the phrases that haunts me is Alexis de Tocqueville. He said, "Democracy tends to eat itself." Perhaps because it has the loudest voices, be the spokespeople for the parties, the most extreme ends, perhaps the role of money in political processes. So I see that the left and the right is taking on so much more than just a political stance. It's becoming almost a new religion about how people are moved by their politics. So there's this big gulf in America. My question to you, from your experiences, are very vast and very colorful. I wonder what you think about the language that we use, perhaps the values that we stand behind, that we can recognize from both sides, that we can find in common between both sides, and from there we can heal this divide.
I don't know whether I will be able to answer precisely your question, but let me mention something that we have seen just recently. Over last 8 months, his new administration got to the White House. Initially, we've heard only critical comments only from Republicans, while Democrats were in very big support of the current administration. Yes, we've seen it. And that is why there was really a big division within the American society. But what we can see right now, the last 3 months, we can see that those outlets that traditionally associated with the Democratic Party, like Washington Post or CNN, they are publishing articles for impeachment of the current president. It's not Republicans, it's Democrats. It means that even for Democrats, at least for some of them, the actions, the policies of the current administration is absolutely unacceptable. And it gives us an idea that the consensus among two political camps can be found, because for some Democrats, not for all of them, but for some Democrats, the policies of the current administration is absolutely unacceptable, because they probably are not ready yet to recognize and to just publicly acknowledge that this policy is anti-American, but it is absolutely inconsistent with their understanding what kind of policy should be pursued by the President of the United States. So that is why, and we know that according to the latest poll, Gallup and some others, the former President of the United States, Donald Trump, is ahead in opinion polls, ahead of Mr. Biden. So today, many more people do support Mr. Trump than they do those people who support Mr. Biden, which means that gradually this understanding for a very substantial portion of American population, not only for Republicans, but for Democrats and definitely for independents, came understanding that this is a very wrong way for the United States. Even they could differ, they could have different views and different opinions on some particular policies. But generally speaking, this is unacceptable now for majority of Americans.
One thing I would like to do is make a comment on one of Andrei's answers that he gave a little while ago, and that is about people running for local nonpartisan office, water board, school board, those kind of things. I think there still exists, even in this country, a cult around the state itself. The belief of common people that, you know, there is a class of people who are operatives of the state who are uniquely able to do things like run a water board. I hear people all the time say, well, I'd like to run for a water board or a fire and rescue board, but I'm not qualified. You know, I don't have any experience. And the truth of the matter is, most of the people who run for these positions don't have experience. When I ran for a position on the Tualatin Valley Water District, I didn't know anything about water, really knew nothing about it. But what they're looking for is good judgment in the making of policies, whether they be at the local level or any other level. If you have common sense, if you're able to respond to quality information, if you're able to ask questions, anybody can be qualified to serve in many, many of these positions. And, you know, we're supposed to be a self-governing society. We need to reestablish the idea that we can govern ourselves, and that, you know, it's better that an inexperienced person is working for your freedom and liberty than an experienced person working against your liberty. And if we don't step up, that's what we're going to get. So basically, as it has always been since the Revolutionary War, it's just us. We have to save ourselves.
If I may, I would add to what Richard has said right now a couple of words. Yes, common sense is very important. Second, what is really important, always check any actions, any idea, any program with principles of liberty, principles of rights of people and interest of general people. This is second. And third, necessity to have non-stop education. Non-stop education, it is very necessary everywhere in your personal life, but it is definitely and absolutely necessary in public life. Without education and self-education, without constant learning from different sources, you will never be successful. I can share my own experience. As Richard has already mentioned, I spent almost 6 years as economic advisors to the Russian president. And generally speaking, I was reasonably good educated by the time, I mean, economically educated in economics when I became economic advisor to the Russian president. But when I found myself in that position, I found for myself that I knew almost nothing in a sense what is necessary for this particular position. Even I prepared myself for some similar job, maybe for previous 15 years before that. And I found that in the job that I was doing at this position of economic advisor, I could use probably 5% or at most 10% of my knowledge that I have acquired before starting the job. And all the rest, probably 90% of what I was doing at this position, it was a new knowledge and new information that I have acquired through education and self-education that I was doing non-stop at this position. And it is true not only for the position that I was exactly what I was doing as advisor on economic issues, but also I became, that happened, like just that happened, I became advisor on climate issues. Because as a Sherpa, Russian Sherpa to G8, I faced that one of the issues very important for G8 that time was a issue of climate change. It's still on the world agenda. And I can tell you, I knew nothing about climate change, but it was demand on my new position to learn about climate. And I had a crash course in climate studies, in physics, in chemistry, in atmosphere, in meteorology, in paleoclimate, in many other issues connected with climate. Fortunately, I had a very good teachers, very good professors, both Russian as well as foreign specialists. And in 3 years, I became a reasonably educated person in climate issues, after which even Russian Academy of Science has bestowed me the position of some kind of a very distinguished degree in climate science. I think probably it was a little exaggeration, but nevertheless, after 2 or 3 years of studying, I was able to communicate with specialists in climatology on more or less equal footing, and did participate in climate conferences, international climate conference around the world, discussing not only policy consequences of particular climate action, but climate science as it is. So it gives probably one of the kind of conclusions for everybody who is looking for that. There is nothing that is impossible to achieve if you have desire, if you have a will and interest to study, to learn, to educate yourself. If you have all these desires, you can do everything that you're really interested in. Also on the public positions.
Are there any more comments for Andrei? I promised him that the meeting would be approximately an hour, so I don't want to keep him too long, but I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to make a comment or ask a question. Is there anything else people would like to add?
I had one more question, if that's okay.
Sure.
First of all, thank you for adding those additional nuggets to my original question. So those are great. Definitely a great answer on both sides. By the way, Richard mentioned earlier the audio of the speech that Andrei made at 2020 lecture. I'm going to put a link to a video version of that as well on our YouTube page. So if anybody is interested to watch that as well, that's available. We were trying to put that together with the audio, and it wasn't working so far. So I have a video that I'll put in the chat room. My question is kind of to add to the kind of continuing that topic. Were you before you became the financial advisor, economic advisor? Did you ever run for any local offices, or did you ever have a elected position before that?
Thank you for this question. Yes, I did. I did participate in not local election, but national election. I did participate in election to the position of the deputy of national parliament in Russian Federation in 1990. And I came, that is why I did not make it to the second round. So that was my experience. It was very helpful. I became acquainted with this experience, with approaches, with technologies, and that helped me a lot in after that. Just I understood this part of life. Even I have not been elected in this position, but I became some kind of acquainted with this information, which was extremely helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
One more
Victoria, go ahead.
Promise. Any recommendations on books or political philosophers that are your favorites? What do you read that you would suggest to us?
There are many good philosophers and authors. Probably what I would say at this, because there are many very good authors, and already Alexis de Tocqueville has been mentioned, which is one of the greatest authors on understanding just human society, and especially American society. And this is a good source of information and memory of what kind of American society was 2 centuries ago, and what kind of society might be when it is free, and is trying to find the best solutions for common cause. I think it's really one of the best authors for collective actions. But probably I would, using your question, would mention one particular issue that I think would be appropriate right now for a situation in the United States and around the world. Probably you've heard, and I'm sure that many of the participants do know the Francis Fukuyama End of History book that 30 years ago became the bestseller that was published by millions and read by tens of millions of people, and became like a Bible for people of our generation. Very well known by Samuel Huntington, Clash of Civilization, who support intellectual discussion in the United States and the whole world. Who is right and who is wrong in understanding modern civilization and modern society? Francis Fukuyama, who claimed that democracy and freedom is future for all humanity, all humankind, for all civilization, in everybody around the world is some kind of has destiny to come to liberal democracy. Samuel Huntington claimed that different cultures, different civilizations do have, I'm using my own words, do have different propensities to freedom, different propensity to develop, to sustain, to support freedom. And this is, I would say, unconventional statement for the last 30 years in many public discussions. But if we look around, and if we look, for example, in such country like Afghanistan that we have witnessed right now, or Syria, or Tunisia, or Russia, versus, for example, Lithuania, or Estonia, or Poland, we need to come to this conclusion. Yes, different societies do have different backgrounds that allow to develop ideas of freedom and defend these ideas of freedom. It does not mean that these ideas of freedom or ideas of free society is closed for some societies, no, but it takes different efforts to develop these ideas, to sustain this idea, to defend these ideas in different societies for different people. And this is a very Samuel Huntington put in his book, and seems to me that over the last 30 years, the intellectual victory of Samuel Huntington over Francis Fukuyama is absolutely evident. And that is why I would strongly recommend to study not only our principles that we cherish so much, but we need to understand what kind of people could support these ideas, could support those institutions, could support and defend those rights, and what kind of people are ready to destroy them. And we need to understand that. And this is a very important, not only theoretical, but first of all, very practical lesson.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing. I hope to, I do intend to read your work, and I hope to see more work from you. Are you thinking of writing any books or any reflecting upon your history in Russia as well as America? I really see that you have a very powerful message about what the people on the ground are saying and what the enduring ideals are and why they're worth protecting. I really hope to see more work from you. Any plans?
Thank you, Victoria, for these very kind words. First of all, I do write regularly. At this moment, I'm a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C. And you can go to the website of the center and you can see some publications of myself in English. If it is comfortable for you, I presume that you can do it in Russian, illarionov.livejournal.com, where I also publish regularly in Russian. And some of this stuff, especially on this culture and civilization, I did already publish and did several interviews that became really, they attracted a lot of attention in Russia, in Ukraine, where I'm right now. And I also discussed in my last 2 hours, slightly more than 2 hours conversation with the host in Russia. One particular country, Russia, fell in authoritarianism, and while Ukraine, which looks like very similar in many sense to Russia, was able to sustain democratic political institutions and free society for the last 30 years. It would be interesting for you to see them, but you can find these at least 2 main sources where I publish my stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I can jump in before Richard closes this session. I just wanted to formally invite Andrei, if you're ever in Portland, we do have a Russian radio program called Slavic Vote Live. I would love to have you on if you do feel like you would be interested in that. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Dmitry. Yes, we definitely do it. We'll do it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's a fun radio program. Natasha and I did it one week. It was kind of funny. All these guys speaking Russian around me and I'm just kind of standing there. But it was a great show and it was a lot of fun. I was treated very well. They'll treat you great, Andrei.
Yes.
Also, I'll point out that a lot of the things that Andrei says that we need to do, encourage people to be active in civic life, continual education, all of those things, this is all part of Western Liberty Network's mission to reweave the fabric of civic life as we try to build communities made up of powerful individuals that have no need for large government and no desire for it. This is a continuing, never-ending battle. There are a lot of good organizations that are fighting it. Western Liberty Network is one of them. And I'll put in a plug for Slavic Vote here. We're very proud that Slavic Vote is a signed affiliate of Western Liberty Network. So is Blexit, Candace Owens's organization, Black Latino Exit, trying to encourage people in those communities to consider freedom and conservatism as an alternative to big government life. And of course, Western Liberty Network, as always, travels all around the state talking to existing activists, trying to give them skills on how to be more effective and encouraging them to run for office. We did a count going back to 2013 and just under 1,100 people who have taken Western Liberty Network training have been elected to some local office. And we've been collecting stories about how this ordinance was avoided or that ordinance was avoided, this tax was avoided or even a tax cut in some cases, a couple of library foundations. So, you know, what we need to do is ramp up our work, expand its scope. In Oregon alone, there are about 7,000 local elected nonpartisan positions, about the same number of appointed positions, which are like planning commissions and budget committees, which are just as important in setting the course of communities and determining whether or not they are going on a course of government dependence or self-reliance. So I really encourage folks to stay engaged with Western Liberty Network as one organization that can do these things. We're very proud of our affiliation with Slavic Vote, Blexit, and of course, Andrei Illarionov has been both a personal friend to Natasha and myself, and also a friend to Western Liberty Network. So we're going to wrap this up and let Andrei get to sleep. It's midnight, past midnight there, where he is in Ukraine, and I'll let him have the last word. Are there any final things you'd like to say, Andrei?
If I may, I would mention that what I like in what Richard and Natasha doing, not only the content of the work, but the title, the name of this network, Western. I don't know what exact sense did you put in this name, probably some geographical sense concerning this Western Coast versus East Coast.
No, actually, I'm going to interrupt you there. Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you there, Andrei, because I'm going to put my logo up here. You see this, the top part of the logo? And what that is the top of a Greek column is what that is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are talking about Western civilization.
Good. That's exactly what I had in mind, because that's probably also related to the question that Victoria has asked. One of the projects that I'm involved over the last several years, and I hope I will be able to finish in reasonable period of time. I'm doing a big project, which I hope it will be book, which is devoted to the birth of the West. West, the civilizational, institutional, is a very unique feature that appeared in one place in the world in one particular time, and due to its historical success over competing systems of civilization did win this competition and demonstrated the highest level of freedoms, liberties, level of development, science progress, everything, because of this unique complex of institutions, values, rights, and so on. So I'm doing this project concerning the very deep roots of the Western civilization. How, when, where this West first appeared, and how it has been developed in what we know as the best civilization system in the history of humankind. So that is why, thank you, Richard and Natasha, for taking this wonderful name for your organization. Thank you, Victoria, for asking this particular question.
Yep. Very good. So with that, we'll close. I want to thank Andrei for his time and for being with us halfway around the world at very late at night. And we look forward to seeing him again soon. We've invited him to come to Portland and spend some time with us. And if he is able to do that with his wife or without his wife, I'm sure that Dmitry will take him up on his willingness to go on the radio show that they have. So with that, God bless everyone. Thank you for your time today, and keep fighting for liberty wherever you are. Take care.
Thank you.